All right, everybody, welcome back. TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. We're here to take a trip down memory lane, AJ, as we're going to look back at AJ's 11 years at TarHeelIllustrated.com. For those who don't know, THI officially coming to an end. What's the official date? Is it July 1st? Is that the official date I can kind of throw out there? Do you?
It's the 30th. I know we
still do stuff on the YouTube side, but like.
It's the 30th is when the website switches over.
Okay.
And for you and me, we're going to stay on the channel and Facebook, Twitter, and we're messing around with the Instagram right now. So, yeah, we're going to do that stuff for a while. And at some point, there'll be an announcement to make. I really can't go into it because I've got multiple things I'm working on and stuff has to be fully agreed on and all that kind of stuff. So something will happen down the road. But what we're going to do is we'll remain on those others, on all our social media. We're going to have to tweak the name some because we won't be Tar Heel Illustrated anymore. So I'm not sure yet what we're going to do with that. THI, TarHeelIllustrated.com, will switch over to On3 on June 30th. Mm-hmm. So our subscribers will then be part of the On3 network, but our staff is leaving.
Yes.
So because I announced the 1st of May that I was stepping away as publisher at THI because I needed better life balance. And then a few days later, we learned about the On3 thing. So they're getting whatever they're going to do is whatever they're going to do. But we're all stepping away June 30th. So that gives us not that much more time, but you'll still be able to find us on the other outlets. And then that's where we're going to announce whatever is next.
Yeah. So just keep it locked, as we've said on a lot of these, if you want to know what happened in the future of it. But for certain, June 30th, TarHeelIllustrated.com is a website kind of coming to an end, but we will still be active. I just think we call it THI and just don't tell anybody what it stands for for the month.
We could come up with all kinds of.
Just say, it's THI. It's just THI. We don't THI THI. It doesn't stand for.
Well, when I send you guys an audio text in my car, I'm driving, and it repeats it back to me. It says "the."
Yeah.
I got some British dude on there now that my wife, I used to have a female voice, and now it's some British guy. I think my wife likes the British dude accent.
Yeah, I have a niece that every time she comes over on our Google Home, likes to change the voice. So it's been.
I don't like it like that.
Ethnicities so far.
And you know how technologically deficient I am, so I got to figure out.
You gotten better though. You gotten better. You gotten better about that. We'll give you a lot of credit. I don't know if this will come out before or after, but we also, just to let everybody know, we did a roundtable podcast with all the people on the staff and previous people who've started on the staff, about, I think it was 10 of us in total, that we just kind of talked for a little bit and went down memory lane a little bit and shared some funny stories and ribbed AJ for a little bit and made fun of his technological, lack of technological understanding, especially in the first few years I started here, but he's gotten better. I gave him credit on that podcast too, and I'll give him credit on this one as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. And again, it might already be out. I don't know exactly what order we're going to run these in yet.
I don't deserve much props as long as I had the British guy. I don't deserve that much props.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But yeah, we wanted to come on here and just do kind of a quick show, and a lot of what we talked about, obviously, on the Roundtable podcast. A lot of these stories won't overlap, but there'll be some things we probably, talked about and other people kind of brought up on here. But this one we wanted to kind of be, and I'll offer my 2 cents because I've been around the last 6 years as well. AJ's been publisher here for 11. So he's got a little bit more stories than I do, going back to the beginning of that 2014 football season, started kind of right before then. So he's seen a lot in his time at North Carolina, but I wanted to get on here and just to have a little structure and to make sure we're not on here for 17 hours telling stories like we almost did on the Roundtable podcast. I want to ask you, AJ, I'll start with this. This is going to be basketball. We'll do another one kind of on football. But when you think of if I was to ask you, what was your most memorable game covering Carolina, or one that sticks out? Is there one that, because I know there's so many and there's probably some you've kind of almost forgotten about, although your memory is fantastic. When someone asks you that question, is there like a one game or two games in particular that always just pop out?
Yeah. And the key here is I have to differentiate the 18 years in this field before I got into THI.
This is your 30th year coming up?
Yeah, I'm finishing my 29th year in the industry. So the last 11 in THI. The one that jumps out to me is the locker room in 2016 after Chris Jenkins and Villanova beat him at the buzzer. I have told people this, and I told you early on, the most real human experience you'll ever have in this business is going into a locker room 15 minutes after a team is eliminated from the NCAA tournament. It is amazing as that is, just to experience that. Imagine what that locker room was like that night in Houston. And I was one of the first ones in, and I walk in and I hear weeping, a lot of weeping. And I hear off into the distance two guys that are kind of sharing their affection for each other, as teammates and family, and they're weeping. And one of them is, "I let you down." And they're back kind of in the shower area. And then out walks Bryce Johnson and Kennedy Meeks. And Bryce was not composed at all. He's the guy you talk to, one of the guys you talk to. So I decided I was going to talk to him first. And I waited. And I remember Matt Bowers, who works for Steve Kirshner in Carolina, I'd let him know. I said, "I'll give him some time." Matt, I think, went and got a chair for Bryce and sat it down sort of in the back of it's a huge locker room. And it may have been like the visiting major league locker room NFL locker room was huge. It was just huge. So the chair's down there. Bryce comes over and sits down, and I have the video still. I actually tweeted it out recently. You can hear me say, "You ready?" Giving Bryce time to compose himself. And you have to ask the question, what's going through your mind when that shot went through? Because the whole sequence leading up to that, after Chris Jenkins was taken in by Nate Britt's family. Nate Stab was DC cop, police officer in DC. He's taken in because Chris's mom had some issues, and I had to go through the Villanova crowd to get to the other side of the court, which is where the total of the locker room was. The media area and the locker rooms, and Chris's mom's there, and she's asking, like, "Where's Nate?" She's worried about Nate, and her boy just made the biggest shot, maybe the biggest shot in NCAA tournament history. And you walk in that locker room, and it's just the air is heavy. You could almost feel the condensation from the tears. And Bryce, to me, personified it. We eventually got through the interview, and I went and talked to some of the guys, and I asked Kennedy Meeks, and I'll find that video and put it out there too, about Bryce, and Kennedy just started crying because he felt responsible that Bryce and Marcus Page and Joel James, to a degree, didn't get the national title that he thought they deserved, and he felt responsible. So I remember talking to him a year later after the Oregon game when he went for 25 and 12 when they beat the Ducks in the semifinals, the Final Four, how elated he was. And he brought up Marcus and Bryce. This is for them too. So they're a part of this because they helped build what we are now. So that to me was just an amazing experience, being in that locker room after something like that. And then I walk out of the locker room to go back to the media area to do all my work. I'm starting rolling stories through my head. And I come out the door, and there's a little holding area almost before the main door that goes into the downstairs concourse in the building. And Roy is just sitting there, and he's down like this and clearly upset. And I kind of tapped him or something, said, "Coach," and he looked up, it's just flush, red, eyes tearing. And this is totally out of character for me. All right. But I bring it up now because sometimes you just experience such a human moment. You're going to be human yourself, and you have to be empathetic toward these guys when things like this happen because it shapes how you approach questions. And I just said, "You did a hell of a job with this team. You did an incredible job with this team." And he tried to say thank you, but really couldn't. I walked on. I didn't think much of it. He was a guy that was really down. He was extremely emotional, and you just see someone that you just want to express something to it.
It's just human to human interaction.
So I'm walking back. I'm like, God, what am I going to write? I don't even remember what my column was that night, to be honest with you. I have to go look it up. But you want to try to capture that and bring it to people because that's one of our jobs. And I'm going to look it up later. I don't even remember what I wrote that night. But I know that I remember sitting down, and I'm like, okay, I have like 5,000 things to do. I get the videos going and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, what am I going to write? I remember going over and getting popcorn they have in the media area. And it's like a little drinking cup. And I bring it over, and I'm trying to pull the popcorn. It keeps falling. I pick up 3 pieces and one falls out. And I'm like, I got to get my bearings straight here. I eventually got banged out on my work and had an early flight the next morning home, but it was just an incredible experience because it's so real. You can choreograph a lot of things in life, but you cannot make that. You can't rehearse that. When you're in the midst of it, you can't do a timeout and say, let me do it over again. You can't do that. It's just as real as could be. I've been in winning locker rooms, the national champions. I was in the 2005 one. Before I got into this job, I was there when Michael Jordan and Dean Smith are sitting around outside the locker room, and I was at the front waiting, and Raymond Felton comes running down the hallway to embrace Michael Jordan, saying, you were right, you were right. And I was there in 2009 when they won that title. I was there in 17 when they won. I was there in 22 when they played for it. I was there when I've covered other teams in national title games. I've been there a lot and seen it. And that night, to me, will stick with me forever as the most raw, real experience I've ever had in this profession.
Yeah, I've heard you tell that story. I think you've told parts of it on podcasts, but never the whole thing like that. But yeah, it's just that I think you've described it as one of the most I don't want to put words in your mouth, humbling kind of experiences of is that kind of an accurate way to put it?
Humbling and human. And what makes it even more amazing is 52 weeks later, I'm in the locker room in Phoenix, and a lot of the same guys have snippets of a net and a hat, and they won the title. They got their redemption.
Yeah.
And that was wild. And you felt good for those kids because they got their redemption. Mm-hmm. And because I was there a year before. So the locker room in 2017 wasn't heavy, didn't seem sweltering. There was no emotional condensation. It was completely different. And those guys, like Kennedy Meeks, was all smiles. Theo, all smiles. Think about it. Joel Berry, Theo Pinson, Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Hicks, Nate Britt. Luke May. Luke had a role in that title. He was there the year before. Didn't play much as a freshman. They all experienced. They were all part of that locker room. Mm-hmm. And then they're part of the one a year later, and they did it. Mm-hmm. I remember Theo saying, I remember there was a timeout or something. And Joel said he had to call timeout so he could stop crying. He had to shoot free throws or something like that.
Yeah.
And feels like we needed just to regroup because we were all emotional on the floor. And so that emotion from the year before connected to that. And I remember when they were doing the nets and stuff like that, just watching. I took a few photos and videos. So some security guy was getting all over me for doing photos. And I had that camera that also did photos and video. It looked the same. He was threatening to throw me out and stuff. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll just soak it in, try to write about it, see what I see. And just, the look on Roy's face. And Roy, that was a really important championship because I think that's the one that separated. And that was post Dean, after Dean had passed. And Roy won one with a team that wasn't exactly loaded with NBA guys. And I think that was a championship that Roy finally felt very comfortable with who he was as a coach. And he started to finally get the credit he deserved. He got bashed a lot before that, even with the 2 titles, because, he just won because he had so much talent. Carolina fans Dean wouldn't have done that. And I would personally take Roy going into an NCAA tournament over Dean. Mm-hmm. I might take Dean for the whole of the season over Roy, but I'd take Roy going into March because the moment Roy coached the moment, Dean coached the longer term. Both great. I know people can get pissed at me for saying that now, but
no, I mean, you've told me. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but I saw it up. I saw it up close with Roy, and I saw how much the kids just played for him and fought for him. And you when you're on a tournament run and you spend a lot of time around the players and you get a ton more access than you do in the regular season, you really figure some stuff out. In 2022, that run was special in part because I really realized as we went through it how important Brady Manek was to that team. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got to the point where this dude from Oklahoma basically could look at a teammate and get him straight. And I thought that was an amazing thing. And I've got a Brady Manek story I could share with you in a minute too. But 16 and 17, 22 was an amazing run. The whole experience of beating K in his last home game and then beating him again and all that was truly true. There were about 5 or 6 songs that I listened to a lot and were listening to because I drove to New Orleans and I drove to Philadelphia. And so I listened to a lot of music and that I hear them now. They still remind me of the 2022 run, which is weird.
Yeah.
One of them is a song called Regret by New Order. I remember playing it a lot and it was going through my head when I was in the Superdome, like on Final Four Friday. And whenever I hear it now, I think back to that 2022 run.
Yeah, immediately kind of put yourself back in that. Yeah. Music is powerful in that respect. No doubt about it. Man, I'll let you tell that Brady Manek story in a second, but I got to ask you this. And this might have been pre-Tar Heel Illustrated, but I don't think we've ever discussed this on a podcast. But I think we'd be remiss if we never brought it up before this THI stuff comes to an end. One of the most famous Roy Williams moments in a press conference is a video that you took and a question that I believe you asked. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I think to quote Roy, like, if I knew what the problem was, do you think we'd still, be having these same free? Yeah. I don't remember exactly. What was it? If I knew what the problem was, you think we'd be having these freaking,
Well, he dropped an F-bomb in there. It was 09, I think. I asked him a question.
I've never actually asked you about that, so that's why I wanted to ask you. I know it's pre-THI.
It was pre-THI. To very quickly, and again, we need to stay on THI on this, but
I had to bring that up.
They played State that night, and they tried Trap it a couple times. State beat the Traps, and I asked them about, such an experienced veteran team. I said, what were the problems with the Traps or something like that? And he gave an answer. And my follow-up was, well, with such an experienced team that had been with you for so long, how is it that they're not better at trapping? And that's when he gave the F-bomb, which was, Roy hated my guts.
And that's one of the most synonymous Roy clips of all time. But that and like the Gottlieb pants on fire, which is a video on our YouTube.
I have that video too. I took that video.
That is on the Tar Heel Illustrated YouTube channel.
But I learned something though, and I learned a lot during 11 years THI. To me, in this profession, you're always learning. I've said many times, you've heard me say this many times. Tony Gwynn took batting practice before his last game when he knew he was retiring. If Tony Gwynn could take BP for his last game when he knows he's retiring, then I have plenty of room to grow. And I learned a lot from that because the way I asked the follow-up question. Mm-hmm. And then when I got into this job where you have to have a deeper relationship with the programs, line of communication with the programs, than when I'm covering the whole league or the region or something like that, it's different. And I learned a lot. And I learned a lot from Roy getting ticked off at me a few times about some stuff. You learn it. Some people in the media think it's a badge of honor to go to battle with a coach. I don't think it's a badge of honor. I think it's the badge of honor is just doing the job the right way. And if you can do it better, there are people that ask questions in a very sharp, edgy way. And I don't think that you're going to get the kinds of responses that you need. You may want a pissy response, but our objective is to get information because we are liaisons to the fans, right?
Yes.
So when you have Bill Belichick and you get one question, and why didn't you ask this or ask that? Well, I only get one question. I'm not going to waste it on something that's not that important.
Yeah.
That's why I went quarterbacks a couple of weeks ago, because I thought that's really important. I want to make sure it gets asked. Ask about Max and the quarterback situation in Geo. So I did. That's our job. And our job isn't to piss people off. Now, you got to be fair. And sometimes you have to ask tough questions. I get it. But there's a diplomatic way of doing it. My brother used to say, and this certainly stems from that Roy question, that I used to kill a fly with a hatchet. Now I just kind of use a fly swatter.
That's why I brought up that. I think it's a funny story, and I wanted you to kind of talk about it on camera. But B, because of the conversations we've had behind the scenes, particularly when I started, I wanted to bring that question up because I know you've talked to me about a lot, not only just that moment, but how learning experiences like that. And I don't even think it was a bad question personally. I get why you're asking it. It was just, I think Roy's pissed in the moment and the way he answered it was funny. It's a funny quote.
Roy tend to be that way, especially pre-2017. He was different after 2017.
But moments like that have shaped you and got you to the point of how you've done the job here at Tar Heel Illustrated and how you've gone about the way you do stuff, of not being worried about being the first to everything and having to have all this, well, let's just get this out there, even though if you've never retracted a story in your career, you know what I mean? Yeah. Things like that, where that's the biggest thing I learned from you at Tar Heel Illustrated, but it goes back to moments before THI that people might not even realize you're the one who asked that question. Again, I didn't think it was a bad question. I just thought it was a funny answer. But those are the moments that have shaped and kind of developed the blueprint for how you've gone about the way you've done things at Tar Heel Illustrated, but how you've gone about teaching me, Bryant, Brandon along the way, Dina. That's how we've always approached things. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think not only are we kind of looking back, but this is a chance to kind of, we've talked about it a lot on shows before, but we always prided ourselves in doing things the right way, not just being the first to things. And if we get something wrong, we get something wrong. At least we were first to it. That's not how we approach things here. And I think that is a very important thing to remember. If people remember Tar Heel Illustrated for anything, no matter what the next step is in our career, I want people to remember it for doing things the right way. And a lot of those moments like that got you to the point where you weren't killing flies with hatchets anymore, because you learned and you improved. And that's life. That's how you should be in work. That's how you should be as a human being. You make mistakes, or whatever you view as a mistake, and you learn from it, you improve from it. And that's all you can do. And I think that's a testament to what we've done here at THI. So
one of the things I've fully embraced during my 11 years at THI is the idea of game film. Mm-hmm. So we ask coaches on Mondays in football, what did you learn from the game film? We ask basketball coaches about the game film. Well, I think media needs to look at their own game film. Now, technically, there isn't. I guess with our podcast, there is. But
or go back and read what you
wrote. Go back and read our stuff. Go back and look at our
ask questions. Yeah,
absolutely. You got it. Because, I mean, when you started, I said, read the piece you sent me, compare it to what I posted, and find the changes I made. Tell me why.
That's how I learned. Yeah,
that's the game film. Mm-hmm. I do it now. I sometimes will have. My wife will read stuff sometimes, and I'll have her do it just because I want another set of eyes on it. And she'll find typos because I'm the king of typos. People on Twitter know that. I mean, geez, that's all over the place. And also to make sure things flow. And I go back and listen to how I ask questions sometimes. Even still, did I ask that the right way? Like if I don't get enough information, did I ask the question the right way? Mm-hmm. Did I ask the follow-up the right way? To me, game film is important. And because in this job, I'm reporting to a single fan base, especially when it comes to basketball, fan base that knows its stuff, you've got to be damn good if you're going to be fully embraced and accepted by the fan base. So game film for a reporter becomes even more important. So it's gone up a couple of notches since I started at THI, and now I'm fully married to it. It's a regular part of how I go about my craft. And it's something that I demand from you guys as well.
Yeah. And it helped me grow a lot, and still helps me grow a lot. Whether it's comments or looking back and be like, I'll listen to podcasts when I'm editing and like, oh man, I should have talked less there. I could have introed that a little bit better. I could have done a little bit of job kind of going to the next question, or I interrupted AJ a couple of times. It's easy to do on a StreamYard or Zoom. It's hard not to interrupt people when you're, not right in front of each other, but little things like that is what we've always tried to do to get better. So you don't want to rest on your laurels. You don't want to just be content with the job. That's one big thing too. You taught me of. You always want to be looking for ways to improve. You can never just be satisfied, because you can always get better. And I think that comes from your athletic background, and me growing up playing sports at a high level, is I can relate to that, because I still approach this not necessarily in a competitive way. I want to put out the best product I can, but I want to look back at my work a year ago and say, man, I've gotten a lot better on a podcast than I was a year ago. And that shows that it's all about not being content, but just always trying to chip away and get better, and a little bit better every day and a little bit better every week. And I think that's how we've approached things here at THI. Hey, not to get all sappy with it, but that's how
it's true. You're only as good as your next piece.
Exactly.
You're only as good as your next podcast. And once it's out there, because it's a never ending parade of content. Content is king. Content's every day. It never stops. Mm-hmm. One of the things when I first got in this business and I was working the Wilmington Star News, one of the tough things to get used to is the fact that I'm working the desk on Friday and Saturday nights. When I used to go out and misbehave, I'm working the desk on Friday and Saturday nights. You start to realize that it's a different world. It's a different lifestyle. And a lot of people can't handle it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Quite frankly, I think a lot of only strange people maybe can handle it. That would qualify me to be prominently positioned in that category. But it's a different universe that you work in, and you kind of finish a piece. I have some satisfaction. Like, okay, well, what's tomorrow?
Yeah. It's like winning a game. It's like you win a game.
At 4:00 in the morning, I'm driving home saying, okay, well, the first piece I post tomorrow is going to be about 3:30, 2:30. That's enough time. And then what do I post? Before I even get home. But I love it, though. That's a labor of love. Now, one of the reasons why I'm stepping away from THI is for more life balance, and I've been blessed to have some opportunities come my way that will have it. I'm still going to be able to grind like crazy, but do so with more life balance. And I'm looking forward to that. But it is a labor of love. And when we get those little moments like I had with Brady Manek in 2022, they stick with you. And a lot of times those moments, you can't do anything with at the time because there's an unwritten rule that some things are just supposed to stay where they are. But over time, they can come out. Like I stopped the recorder and I couldn't go write what Brady said because it wasn't meant to be reported at that time.
You got so many
things. A lot of things, people that come into this business, especially young ones, especially ones that maybe aren't trained or have good mentors, they come in and they think everything you see in here is supposed to be out there. That's not true. And one of the reasons why I've been fortunate to be able to develop a lot of sources and where I know when we report some, I'm so comfortable knowing we have the right information is because I haven't just blurted all kinds of stuff out there. Some young people in the business or new people in the business get very excited when they get a little bit of information. They want to run with it.
Especially on social media age. Especially on social media.
And that's how you make a lot of mistakes. And also, if you want to develop trust, okay, there's conversations. I've had goodness knows how many conversations and things I've seen and heard and watched and even been a part of that cannot be made public, at least for a certain period of time. Like the Brady story, there's a statute of limitations. I think that's passed now. I don't think he'd have a problem with it. It's not a big thing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't report it at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many.
The camera was off.
We'll have, as you like to say, this stays here. We'll have conversations like this has to stay here kind of thing about things that have happened. And we're not going to, like the Brady Manek story, which you're getting ready to tell. So tell me the Brady Manek story. We could sit on here for hours talking about it. We'll end it with the Brady Manek story. Leave the people on that.
Well, I couldn't do it then because the camera was off and it wasn't meant to be quoted. So we didn't get a lot of in-person stuff in 21-22 season because we're still post-COVID and we did a lot of stuff on Zoom. But at the end of the year, we started getting more in-person stuff. And after they beat Duke in New Orleans, we weren't allowed in the locker room. Mm-hmm. And the NCAA tournament always allowed in the locker room, but it was closed because of COVID still. So the players were lined up on the wall outside the locker room. And I talked to different ones. I finished with Brady. And, I had the camera. And I'm finishing with Brady. And I go ahead and, okay, thanks. I stop recording, close it, bring it down, and said, appreciate it. And I start to turn and walk away. He says, hey, AJ or Andrew, something like, he said AJ or Andrew. I turn and he says, did you think we could do this? And I'm like, well, actually, I remember telling some people I thought that they could make a UCLA-like run. And we talked about it on podcasts that year. But I didn't think that they were getting to the national title game and beating Duke twice.
Nobody did. Nobody
thought that. I said, I thought you all could make a run, but no, not this. I mean, I'm paraphrasing my response. He said, we did. He turned and walked in the locker room. And when
That's
said
powerful, man. That kind of got, I don't even know if I've heard that story, man. That kind of gave me goosebumps a little bit. That's a powerful.
Yeah, because remember what I said a few minutes ago, how he kind of took over. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy, not like I had a relationship with Leaky.
Oh, yeah.
Like I knew Leaky was coming back. I talked to his mom in the airport in Dallas after the first week. Oh, yeah, Leaky's coming back.
He was very comfortable around you. He was a great interview.
Great relationship. I love Leaky Black. Mm-hmm. But here's Brady. He knew because he watched our stuff. He watched, IC and everybody else. He knew who did what. His family was really watching a lot of stuff. His aunt was commenting to us a lot every once in a while about things we were reporting, right? So they were very aware. And the way he said we did, he turned and walked in there. That's like a movie scene.
Yeah.
And it was powerful. I thought they were going to win Monday night because of that, which, again, you live and learn. They should have. They were up 15 at the half. And I remember at halftime thinking, man, they are so locked in, because that was such a locked in response by him. But it also, I realized at that time, because remember, we weren't super close to that team until the Duke game at Duke. That's when we finally had like an in-person thing. And so I'm trying to get to know these guys and get to know their chemistry. And that's when I realized this makes sense. That guy just stepped up and said, I'm going to grab you four, and a couple of you others are going to straggle behind, and we're going to make it happen. This is my one shot. I'm on this stage. We're going to make it happen. And that's kind of what that response told me.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's so many stories like that you've either told me or I have never heard before. Of just little moments like that you don't go out there and run to social media and say, I just talked to Brady Manek and he said, so you can get about a couple thousand likes. And I think I'm not going to say that's how we've tried to approach things here. It's not about the clicks all the time and, we can get like 5,000 likes if you go on Twitter and tweet about this, AJ. It's like, it's the human to human interaction that you really taught me about, of like, at the end of the day, this is a human being. I'm a human being. I don't have to go. I wouldn't want anybody going to run and telling everything that I ever say behind the scenes. Don't want to get out. And that's how you approach it, despite being in the media. So
I'll throw one other thing out there. I'm not going to go into details on this. You know the story. It's Kennedy Meeks and Roy. You remember the story when Kennedy created his second Twitter handle mocking what Roy had said. And he was really hurt by it. And I remember we finished an interview and Kenny kind of went a little bit more in. He was complaining about Roy. Kenny was sophomore, early in his junior year, maybe. Yeah.
Roy was pretty hard on Kennedy because he saw the potential.
He rode him hard. Well, he wanted him to lose weight.
Yeah, he saw the potential there when he could be.
Roy's someone who just never, he said, I understand that people can be overweight. But Kennedy was one that, Roy rode him. Roy would ride guys hard, but he really rode Kennedy hard. And Kennedy's talking to, it was somebody else and me, maybe two other reporters and me. This is back before they changed where we talked to the players. He was sitting on a couch. It was in that lounge that was before they redid everything. There's a pool table in there and everything. And he's sitting was in the same spot in the couch that Tyler Hansbrough used to always sit. Players kind of create their own designated spots in post game. And he started getting a little bit emotional, and he was telling us what Roy called him and what Roy would say and how it bothered him. And I remember in 2017, it was in Brooklyn, maybe after the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. We had finished the interview, and I said, I kind of leaned in and I said, how's Roy treating you? He says, it's beautiful, man. Beautiful. And he had so much reverence for Roy because Roy found the buttons to push. And that's something that I learned from a lot of guys, that Roy would push all the buttons. Some coaches push every button the same. That's not right, because everyone's unique. Everyone requires a different button. One of the things that made Roy Williams such a great coach is he figured those buttons out. Now, sometimes you got to keep jamming that button. When you're waiting for an elevator and you push the button and the light's on, I mean, it's going to come eventually, but there's always that guy that goes and hits it a few more times. Well, Roy would never see the light on, even if it was on, until the product is complete in that sense, till that message was fully through. Roy would keep jamming that button, jam. And he stopped because he stopped calling Kennedy that last year. Kennedy got it. And he's so grateful, I would imagine, to this day that Roy did that, because he got the most out of him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you're right. That's what sets the elite apart from everybody else. Is, again, it comes back to that human interaction. Is some people need an arm around the shoulder. Some people need to be kind of pushed in that way. Some people respond better to being yelled at. Some people don't respond better to being yelled at. But that's when you learn how to manage people. That's when you can become elite. If you don't know how to manage people as a coach, then you're probably not going to get very far with it, because not everybody's the same. So, yeah, that's a great story to end. I'd forgotten about that story too. There's been so many stories over the years; they all kind of run together. But yeah, those are two pretty good ones to end this one on. I think we could sit here for an hour telling them, and I'm sure we'll do some more in the future. And I think we had talked about doing what did we talked about earlier? We talked about doing a drop looking at the top 5 players or the starting lineup for like Carolina players you covered on the basketball side in your time at Carolina. Maybe during that podcast we can kind of dive into maybe some more stories you got with some of those guys. I think that'd be a good place to do it.
There are a lot of them.
A lot. Someone may never see the light of day, but there'll be a few that will.
It's an absolute blessing. I know when we did that group Zoom podcast where I said to Trey, look around and appreciate this, because I always do. Chapel Fowler is a phenomenal sports writer.
Yeah, Chapel's a great guy too.
His dad's a legend down at the Charlotte Observer, and Chapel covers Clemson, I think, for the State, which is the paper in Columbia. And I remember him asking me, maybe in 2017 in Greenville, we're out at the open practice, and I remember him asking me something to the effect of, does this ever get old for you? And I told him no. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It's always, I'm always excited. It's always a blessing. Never gets old. And he says, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I think he's thinking, he hopes that when I'm his age, it's still fun for me.
Yeah.
This is a while ago, but I remember Chapel asking that question, and I've never once gotten in my car to go to a game saying, man, I don't want to do this tonight. Mm-hmm. The reasons I wanted to pull back from THI, as I said before, was because there's the minutia that adds up. It's 363 days a year. It's constantly being on call. Imagine if you had to be prepared for surgery 24/7, essentially what it's like. So, I could still grind and do amazing work, just maybe only 70 hours a week instead of 90.
Yeah, it's like, so you're telling me, AJ, you don't want to work 80 hours a week doing 65 days a year. How could you, man? It's pathetic.
I had a job in this business when I was at Buster Sports, where I was working 105 hours a week because I was doing the ACC, and they gave me the Big East because they lost the Big East guy. And this is in
I wouldn't have lasted a week.
This is in the summer.
AJ, I wouldn't have lasted 2 days.
This is in the summer.
I wouldn't have lasted 2 days.
Well, it nearly killed me too. I nearly died in 2009
I know.
When I got rushed to the hospital. I had to stop my heart twice.
Yeah. No, you get it.
Actually, they can only see this much of one lung. But I remember going in there, and he said, well, let's see what we could do to get you down to about 90 hours a week. That was the response.
I wouldn't have lasted a week. You're a better man than me, AJ. I've said that many times, but you, one of the hardest working, if not the hardest working guys in the business, man. I've been able to see it up close and personal for 6 years now. And it's a grind. It's a labor of love. But I remember the first time I ever talked to you on the phone, the first thing you basically told me is, like, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows. Like, you're not just, you got to be ready to work and ready to do this job. And I'll never forget that, because I remember exactly where I was when you told me that. It kind of scared me a little bit. I was like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have got a journalism degree. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
And you came to football practice that night.
And then the rest is history. Yeah, the rest is history, man.
I had a good vibe. And then once you came there, and I had a good vibe pretty early about you.
Yeah, I've always said it, man. I've told you before, I just appreciate it. All I wanted was an opportunity, because I felt if I could just get one, I feel like I could, kind of take it and run with it. So I hope I've done a good job with doing that, but wouldn't be here without you giving me that opportunity. So
you're still here.
Yeah, still here. Still got more work to do, as they say, and hopefully got some exciting things in the works in the future too. But we'll leave that at that. But we can leave it there, AJ. Again, we'll do some more pods in the future. I'm sure AJ will have plenty of more stories to kind of divulge on here. So make sure you guys subscribe to TR Illustrated below. Hit the notification bell too, so you know every single time we upload. And keep it locked to our social media channels. Any more announcements come in the future, that you'll be able to find it there. And yeah, we appreciate you guys going along the journey with us for the last 11 years on AJ's side and the last 6+ years on my side. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully there's plenty more to do in the future when it comes to UNC, but we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, man, it's been a fun ride regardless of how things work out in the future. I think I think I can speak for you when I say you've thoroughly enjoyed it despite working 160 hours a week.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Most of the time. That's for dang sure. Like, besides the times when you got a delayed flight, or the Amtrak stops working, so you got to take a rental car back all the way and then got to cover a game the next day. All that stuff maybe got old, but besides that, everything.
In this job, a football basketball story, Carolina played on a Monday night at Stanford in basketball. So I flew out there Sunday, had a football game Saturday, flew out to San Jose on Sunday, covered the basketball game Monday night, had a very, very early flight, didn't sleep, landed at RDU, got my car and went straight to football practice and got there in time for post-practice interviews on Tuesday. So I was Monday night at Stanford in basketball, Tuesday talking to Larry Fedora and some football players after practice.
Probably loved every second of it too, besides the flight probably. But
I enjoyed telling the story.
You wouldn't miss it. You wouldn't have missed that practice. Hell would have flown over before you missed that practice.
There's a sports writer thing or sports journalist thing where when you have crazy stories like that, you there's a little small badge of honor thing where there's another stripe on the shoulder. The Stanford at night, Kenny Williams hitting all those threes, and then the next day you're talking football in Chapel Hill without yet coming home. There's the Mac's first spring practice I covered with no sleep because Jenna Miller and I, she was our photographer at the time. We went to Clemson for basketball Saturday night, and we got stuck for 7.5 hours on 85 coming home because of a truck spill.
Remember that?
And I dropped her off at home and then basically went straight to football for Mac's first practice, and I covered it on no sleep. And we drove to Clemson that Saturday morning. So drove to Clemson, covered a basketball game, drove back 7.5 hours stuck on the highway, and then dropped her off and went straight to football. Mac's first spring practice when he came back, 2019.
That's fucking awesome, man. That's the badge of honor. And again, that's what you do in this business. And again, that's the pride you kind of take in your work, and trying to do the best work you can for the people who pay their hard-earned money to be subscribers on our at Tar Heel Illustrated. So yeah, man. Like I said, you wouldn't have missed that practice, that 30-minute post-practice interview where you might not have been that important. You might not have got any revelations out of it, but hell would have froze over before you missed that. So I think that's where we'll leave it on that one. So appreciate it, guys. As always, make sure you keep it locked. And I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.